Yes, guys, welcome to another episode of Matt Zena Acting Tips. Today I'm going to be talking about crying. It's an obsession within this industry. It really is, and it's tough, and it's something that puts a lot of actors under a lot of pressure. But the first place to start about crying is that I want you to remember one thing. If you ever look like you're trying to cry, you're not doing it properly. The whole idea of being in this industry and being an actor is to tell the truth. And whoever tries to cry, most people in life are always trying not to cry. They cry, but they're trying to stop the tears. So what does that look like? And how do you make it look real and truthful? First thing you need to do is you need to train yourself to put yourself in the correct emotional space, and that takes a lot of work. Don't think you can just switch it on. You should never be able to just switch on tears, because that will never look authentic or truthful. You need to put yourself into the emotional space that's so extreme whereby you are holding back the tears. And you have to put yourself, once you are in that emotional state, to put yourself in a position of vulnerability. What you don't do is you don't hide from the way that you feel. When you put on the camera, when you're in front of somebody else, you have to look vulnerable. Now, there's a space with vulnerability where you're not pushing anything out, you're letting everything in. And suddenly, when you let everything in, it becomes vulnerability. Now, I've not put myself into an extreme emotional state there, but even I managed to look vulnerable just from allowing, not pushing anything out and letting everything in. You draw people in to your emotional state and you show it by letting everything in. Now, it's hard to explain, and I do explain it in much more detail in my acting classes, okay? However, you have to make yourself vulnerable and put yourself in the correct emotional state. Then in order to generally get to the point where tears may emerge, is you will then use the text and the circumstances and get a higher sense of belief in those circumstances, the other person, and you will then play the scene truthfully. You will exist within that scene. But the one thing you'll never do is try for tears. If tears happen, they happen. If they don't, they don't. If you feel like there should have been tears based on the circumstances, based on your understanding of those circumstances, but they didn't appear, you don't force them out. You go back to working on your emotional state and your vulnerability within that emotional state. You never force them out. Now, there's one thing that could happen, and happens a lot, and that is tear stick and kind of the mechanics of it, putting some, I forgot what it's called, glycerin or something that drops out of your eye, okay? And that's fine, because that doesn't affect your performance. But if you're forcing tears, that will affect your performance and the audience's belief in a scene, okay? So there is ways of producing tears, but don't let that affect your performance by forcing out tears. It never works, because the only thing we ever do in real life is try and stop ourselves from crying. And there's a difference, okay? There's also another way, and that is where you close your eyes, rub your eyes, and then open them, and you do not close your eyes until it produces tears. You rub your eyes with them closed, and then after about a minute you open them and it produces tears. But then you go into the scene and you play the scene without trying to cry. There's such a difference, okay? So there's my advice on crying. Never force it. If you feel like you should, as part of the scene, go back to your emotional state and your vulnerability. Then, if you're working with a director that really needs tears and maybe they're not coming, then you've got different options like tear stick, the kind of drops that fall down your face, and there's that little technique, okay, a little known technique. But apart from that, don't try to cry, because no one ever forces tears. They're only ever holding them back, and there's a huge difference. Right, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found that useful. Much love, have an amazing week, and like and subscribe, and I will see you next week for another episode of Matt Zena Acting Tips.